Welcome once again to the Irish NFL podcast, brought to you in association with Titan Roofing. As always, I'm Mark Cockrell, a fan this week of the nausea exuding, problem child, New England Patriots. And I'm joined as always by my friend of, next year great New York Giants, Brian O'Leary.
Good evening, Mark.
And as always, by our good friend Gordon Bridgefield, a fan of the perfect still Pittsburgh Steelers. Good evening, Gordo.
Good evening, Mark.
Well, gents, yet again, another fantastic week of NFL action in the books. Lots of exciting finishes, lots of great finales. But we're joined this week by a special guest from the UK and Irish Packers, Stephen O'Brien. Stephen, good evening to you as well, sir.
How's it going? I thought when you were talking about nausea-inducing stuff, that was my intro, and I was like, Jesus, is that how we're doing it?
That would be a bit harsh. No, at least your team can score what's known as points these days, unlike the Patriots and the Jets. But you're joining us, obviously. You're a co-founder of the UK and Irish Packers, which you'll find you've a website. You're on every form of social going, YouTube, Insta, Facebook, etc. And also you've got a fantastic Packers focused. The clue is in the name there. A Packers focused podcast that you've put a lot of effort into with you and your co-founder over the years. So maybe before we get going and talk about all the NFL action, maybe Stephen, you just give us a bit of a background on you, the site, and everything. Even indeed how and why Green Bay Packers.
Well, this is here we go. Sit back, lads. Buckle in. This is a 40-minute here. No, really quickly, I guess. Look, I was a Packers fan for a very long time. There wasn't really a dedicated Packers group as such in the UK and Ireland. Like you lads, you're in your living room. You get to the playoffs. I know some of you lads probably don't get to the playoffs, but good teams get to the playoffs, right? And you're jumping up and down, and you're waking up the dog and the missus and everybody else, and they don't care. You go into work tired from a late game, and they don't care. So the group kind of started then about 7 years ago, and it's kind of gone from strength to strength. I could get into the granular. Why the Packers? I guess as a Paddy, I'm into history, and the Packers are steeped in it. And Eagles is a bird, makes sense. Falcons is a bird, also makes sense. But when I saw the Packers, I was like, what the hell's the Packers? So I looked into it, got sort of caught up in the history of it, which I'd advise anybody to do who's kind of neutral, and that's how that kind of started. So it started as a Twitter account. Moved to a website. We did articles and stuff because I used to write for NFL Ireland on a place called Second City Fanatics, actually as a Texans writer, but still a Packers fan. Got into it that way. So I had sort of contacts in the NFL world, let's say, and it kind of just snowballed from there. Today, now we have the Twitter account, like you say, where we hang out most of the time. Facebook, the website, we do March raffles every single month. So if you sign up to our Patreon, well then you can win some quality signed jerseys and stuff. And like you said, the bread and butter then is the UK Packers podcast and everything else. But mostly what we're about is just bringing fans together, be it on social media. And before COVID hit, we'd do meetups all around the UK and Ireland. Like I think last year was our most successful. I think we had about 8 between Wales and Scotland and all around England and Ireland as well. So yeah, it's all about bringing fans together. And we used to have, pre-COVID, an annual trip to Green Bay. So we go to the Mecca itself, and it was always a blast. We'd meet players and autograph signings and everything else. Very long-winded. But there's the background story. The Packers actually come over wildly and did 2 documentaries on the group. One about how it got started and what all that is, and the second one was on one of our trips to go over to Green Bay. So people can check those out. They're on our website, ukpackers.co.uk. If it sounds like a shameless plug, it probably is. But yeah,
sounds good. And on the official Packers website, and then also you do an NFL segment every weekend on Sunshine Radio as well.
Yeah, me, Ken, and Reg. Ken Doherty and Reggie Kerrigan. So that's the show starts at 9. I come on at about 9:30. Ramble through sort of NFL in general news. Let's say try get a plug for the Packers where I can, and then also do the ACCA then at the end, which I know you lads do your betting stuff, and that is an absolute labor of love. My God, to do those ACCA slots. That's where you get credibility and you sort of know what you're talking about, and then you start saying to bet money on games, and then people lose money, and then they blame you, and then it's a hard task. But anyway,
it was hilarious when I watched the video of you going through how you picked your team and the formula you used for it. It made me starting to think, how did I become a Pittsburgh Steelers fan? Right. And I was trying to remember back. I'm of the younger generation. I'm a bit younger than the guys, although I may not look it. But it was Madden that got me into the NFL. and it was back around 2007. And I remember I started playing with Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
It was just about 2 years ahead of their Super Bowl win. And it was listening to that video and watching it, I was kind of going, how did I pick the Steelers? And it was through a football game. And that's, again, I'm of the younger generation. I wasn't used to watching it on free to air, etc.
Yeah.
That was my route into the NFL. But I just thought it was very funny when you decided to delve deep into what Packers are.
Very common though, because I mean we have a lot of people that like, and that's the sort of happenstance too. We've one guy, actually the other co-founder, he got into it because Dorsey Levens, the Packers player, was on the cover of Madden, and I think the previous year there was a Lions player on it. So he was thinking if I got into it a year earlier, there would just be a world of pain. So yeah, it's happenstance really.
We're the old school fans, America.
Sorry?
We're the old school fans.
We're apparently really old, Brian.
Yeah.
According to Google, I love it. I love it. No, if you're a Lions fan, you just happen to love exceptional players who want to retire early because they play for the Lions. I mean, Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, etc. It's just a constant pain. Although as a Packers fan, you kind of like you like the 2-3 games a year. So I can understand that's tough to watch. I also want to point out for Stephen's benefit, long-term listeners of the pod will realise, is that while Gordon is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, he is also a fan of the Cleveland Browns, of the Atlanta Falcons, of anything that moves, basically.
The underdog story. I think we've gone through this before in the past. I have a soft spot for underdogs, and I always like that story following. But yeah, the Browns and a few others, the boys have never let it down after the one season when I decided it was the Johnny Manziel era. I got the flash, the money, the draft. It just blinded me. It blinded me that year. I just became a fan for one season.
You must have to be forced to be a Browns fan though. You should not be allowed change to the Steelers, particularly in the season that they're having. I think as a forfeit, I think if the Steelers win so many games this season, you have got to go back to the Browns. I think that's
go back to the Browns.
Yeah.
Well, we had him up to 6 teams at one stage, no, Mark?
Yeah, we did. I can't even remember, Brian. I can't even remember. He's just multiplying his odds for potentially some playoff action.
Yeah. You know, Steelers at heart, but then just every now and again I like to follow more and more. It's the youth in me. You know what I mean? I follow multiple teams throughout the season. It's the Madden. I blame the Madden.
So let me ask you this then, right? Tebow, when he played for the Broncos, let me guess, he had a Tebow jersey, right? And it was Tebow time.
I turned to Christianity that year. I went to Chris. Yeah, I was a Tebow fan for the 3-4 months that he was big. I think it's the quarterbacks of the draft every year. I kind of get blinded by that. So Trevor Lawrence, I'm looking forward to. Now, if he goes to the Jets and Adam Gase is there, I'm not going to be following them anyway.
Sorry, we've got to take a TT here. We've got to take a Tebow timeout. Are you serious for a second, actually, Gordo? Because this is like a dark secret being exposed from your past right now.
No, but I was one of the things when Tebow came out. I was like this quarterback that came out. He was the the golden child of the college football, but he was also Christianity, not before marriage, all this kind of stuff. I thought it was a fascinating story. Yeah,
Gordon, a few years ago, you loved Watson when he was getting drafted. When we did those the draft previews, you go, "Oh, Deshaun Watson." Now you're showing him under the bus. So Lawrence will be dead to you in 2 years.
He's overrated. Watson. I called it already.
All I can remember, Gordo, is, and this is the problem with you liking too many teams, is that Tebow, 316 yards with an average of 31.6 yards, put the Pittsburgh Steelers out of the playoffs. If you remember that particular
cracking game.
Our pass to Demaryius Thomas on the first play of overtime. So, Tebow giveth and he taketh away.
And then he went to New England the following week and he came back down to earth.
What a circus that was. My God.
Anyway, Mark.
Pat's been 45-10 or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was like they're up at 27 and a half time or something.
Anyway, guys, I mean...
he's left. Look, he's got annoyed now, lads. It's fine.
He's had enough.
Or is he kneeling down or something? He's taking a Tebow time out there.
Gordon's running away then.
Just a quick one.
He's running down Heinz Field there, he was.
Well, that's where I remember is Heinz Ward. That's why I was confused, Gordo with. Anyway, moving swiftly on, however, and let's turn to some of the action. Stephen, we will turn to your Packers, now 5-1 Packers. Actually, on the pod last week, I said they were 5-1, then I corrected myself and said they're 4-1. I'm just fast forwarding a week because there's no way they were going to lose that particular game. Obviously, you've got a bit of a walk in the division at the moment because, like, even the games of the weekend, Lions and Falcons we might touch on briefly in due course, like two teams who like to hurt each other, but Lions got to win out somewhere. Yeah. Vikings, thankfully for them, are on a bye. It means they can't lose a game this week. but also the Bears. You know, it's kind of like last week Cinderella lost her glass slipper. This week, definitely everything's turning back to pumpkins, and they realize, oh, you actually need to throw the ball and make offense in the modern day NFL to win games. So they went down 24-10 to the Rams. So I'm not saying the Packers are already guaranteed a playoff spot, but certainly they're playing well enough, and they handled the have-nots and the Houston Texans pretty comfortably at the weekend, 35-20.
Yeah, and I spoke about this on our podcast. The Texans are no chumps. I mean, if you look at their record, the fact that they fired their head coach, you know, sort of a bird's eye view if you're not paying attention or looking at it deeply, because we all sort of follow our own teams, and that's fine. You know, you would sort of look at that team and go, oh, look, it's a definite win. And that's fine. And it was, and we handled them pretty comfortably. However, what happened against the Bucs, Aaron Rodgers says was an anomaly. It ended up being an anomaly unless we lose again, and then that's another anomaly. But, you know, we got manhandled. You know, we put up, not to sort of go back in time here, but just I think it gives good context to how we handle the Texans, I guess. You know, the offensive line had a bad day against the Bucs. Aaron Rodgers, you know, spent most of his time on his back, under pressure. He can't get the ball out. They stuffed the run. They were basically in our backfield. I thought they were our running backs at some stage. So to come back against the Texans, who, if you look at it, like, what are they, 1-5 now? 1-6, and if you look at. So look who they lost to, right? So the Chiefs, they're top of their division. Steelers undefeated. Ravens second in the division, only behind the Steelers. They had a dud game against the Vikings, but again, the Vikings can be dangerous depending on when they want to sort of turn it on. And then they lose to us. You know, and look at our record. We've only lost one game. It was a blip, an anomaly to the Bucs. So I mean, look, it's hard for them too. You know, Deshaun Watson, great player, has some nice weapons there. It's their defense, and you can see JJ Watt getting frustrated and everything else. Romeo Crennel, I mean, the guy has pedigree. Not going to say I heard the comms saying during that game, oh, he's a Hall of Fame career. He's like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Just relax. So let's look at his record before he starts spouting off here. But, you know, he's a dependable guy. He's been around for forever. So to do what we did against the Texans was super impressive because we were missing David Bakhtiari on the offensive line. The offensive line basically gave up no pressure whatsoever. Aaron Rodgers had a clean pocket, had time to pick them apart. Aaron Jones, our Pro Bowler running back, he was out. Jamal Williams steps in, the second in command. Aaron Rodgers is crazy about him. So are we. He's a happy guy off the field, dancing around, and that's kind of headline stuff. But then you see his play on the field. Now, if you look at his yards per carry, you're looking at him and you're thinking, right, that's nothing flashy, but he gets all the hard yards. The guy's incredible. Davante Adams, I mean, just takes over the game. He's definitely probably the best wide receiver in the league, in my opinion. If you see the way he took that over, 196 yards on 13 receptions, one shy of the franchise record, bearing in mind Green Bay started in 1919, 1921. So it was just an incredible performance, how they manhandled them. 21 zip at the half.
And I was just going to say, though, Aaron Jones, I'm glad you called him out because he's been kind of my underrated MVP for the Packers this year. I've made a big play about how much he's helped take the pressure off Aaron Rodgers. But actually, focusing on Adams for a second, amazing performance, absolutely. It was almost obscene numbers when you think about it.
Yeah.
But you're helped out a little bit by the Texans. When a guy's having that kind of a day, just forgetting to cover him on one of his 45-yard touchdowns, like, doesn't, you know, help necessarily in that way. But looking at the season as a whole, Steve, I mean, like, as you say, 5-1, bit of a blip. In the other games, they acquitted themselves extremely strongly. Certainly at the start of the season, Brian and myself were very high on the Vikings maybe challenging the hegemony there, and they're just having an implosion of a season all across the board and the like. But I'll say this, and this is a bit controversial probably to a Packers fan, but Aaron Rodgers to me is a bit like Peyton Manning used to be. He will put up amazing regular season statistics. He will get great records, 15-1 seasons, 14-2 seasons. And yes, probably not because of him, probably because of his defense. Mike McCarthy is obviously proving some doubters right in Dallas these days. But something seems to go wrong in the playoffs. I mean, he's made 2 Super Bowls, obviously. He lost one a really great Super Bowl, I would say, and won one, obviously, taking the MVP trophy at that stage. What is the secret sauce? Someone who watches every game, every throw, every play religiously. How do you equate for that of someone that has obviously got all the talents in the world and can make throws that no one else in the NFL can make?
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is doing stuff and people are getting carried away, but Aaron Rodgers has been doing it for a long time. It's a very complex question, but it all comes down basically to defense. It also comes down to teams getting hot. I mean, the fact that we were waxed by the Giants in the playoffs, that's a sore spot. We come up against Kaepernick in the playoffs, who was an unknown entity at that time. We had trouble trying to stop running quarterbacks. And then it comes down to defense. If you look at the numbers that Tom Brady has in the playoffs and what his defense gives up versus what the defense for Aaron Rodgers gives up, well, then that's the telltale sign. You know, wins are not a quarterback stat as such, and we all know that now. It all comes down to defense, and that's what's really killed the Packers over the years. I mean, they kept Dom Capers for far too long than they should have, and they should have let him go well before. Even now, we still have that kind of a problem, right? Because our offense is firing on all cylinders, yet our defense seems to be able to make splash plays. But outside of that, we're getting gouged. Now, that game against the Texans, we did pretty well. But again, the trope out there is let's see how you do against a good team. You know, people who have strong running backs and everything else, and see how we get gouged open, and that could happen again for sure. But for Rodgers and his performance in the playoffs, we spoke about it a lot on the podcast. It comes down to kind of individual circumstances or players. Like Kaepernick was a game wrecker. The Giants got on a hot streak and ended up going the whole way. And then otherwise from that, it's defense. Or what happens is that the game comes down to the wire, and then we don't get the ball back, and then all of a sudden we lose. So Aaron Rodgers was never even got a chance. Now, do we mention the NFC Championship game against the Seahawks? No, we don't mention that game. That was a game that was just wild. But there's a perfect microcosm and answer to your question. There is like 10 different things that went wrong in that game. Like they like to put it at Bostic's feet, the fact that he didn't catch the ball, and Jordy Nelson, one of the best receivers in the game, was behind him, and it was his assignment to catch the ball. Bostic was in the block, and then Tramon Williams, diving on the back of a defender and letting him get into the end zone, and Russell Wilson doing what he was doing. So every sort of loss can be broken down that way. You have to really get down to the granular to see, but more often than not, it's usually Aaron Rodgers doesn't get the ball back when it comes down to it, and there's nothing he can do at that stage.
No, and I'd love to. I mean, this is a conversation over a few pints more, talking about, well, he also didn't move the ball very well in that second half of that game, so we didn't put additional points on the board. There's the Arizona wildcard game, which was just a wild game all over the place in relation to it. So, no, I'm with you. There's lots of different scenarios. I mean, Jesus, in the last 20 years, the Giants have won 2 Super Bowls, so we really, truly know anything can happen in this world. Even the worst teams can get on a streak. I actually saw a stat during the week that statistically the worst NFC East champion of all time, because obviously it's in vogue at the moment to analyze this, is actually the 2011 Giants, and they did win a Super Bowl. So
finished with 9-7 record.
What's that?
9-7 record. Who did we beat in those 2 Super Bowls, Mark?
You beat the Patriots, I believe, in both.
Brady.
I can't remember. I seen
Tom Brady twice, Mark.
On my mind entirely in the luckiest.
Say that really still gets you though, doesn't it? I can always tell it gets you, Mark.
Do you know the funniest thing is, and Stephen, you just bring this through all that, your thoughts and points on that, is you probably have analysed and know and can remember the plays in the games you lost almost better than the games you won, because you know exactly the breakdown. It's like, that's where, if only this had happened. Everyone talks about the helmet catch in the Giants-Pats game. I remember Asante Samuel's drop with a surefire interception on the play just before that.
Mark, it was 2 plays before that. Get it right. Yeah, you're right. And in the other Super Bowl, Wes Welker had an easy catch that he dropped that would have put the game away.
And Giselle said, my husband can't throw and catch the ball at the same time. Yes, we do remember it. Something Aaron Rodgers currently isn't having problems with Davante Adams playing so smoothly and so well, though. But look, let's move on to talk about some of the other games. And I'm sure, Stephen, you can get in the jibes in certain instances. And I do hope you'll duly take the mick out of all of us at times on this. But if we move on through the rest of the games, a couple we want to kind of focus on or highlight. Look, fast and furious finishes last week. Saints eked out a win 27-24 against the Panthers, which wasn't quite as dramatically exciting as others, but one 27-24 win that was extremely exciting was Gordon's team in the battles of the undefeated. It's like the true clash of the Titans. 27-24, A.J. Brown going off on one just like Davante Adams did. And the Steelers ultimately just squeaking through, Gorda. An amazing start, but 3 points in the second half. And Stephen Gostkowski, this is why you pay a kicker a lot of money, of course, to miss the game-time field goal with the last kick of the game. Gordo, break it down for us.
Yeah, like you mentioned it there, AJ Brown, he just had a massive game again for the Tennessee Titans. And when it came to the Steelers, they came out of the blocks fast and hard, and they racked up the points quickly. And again, this was essentially a game of two halves. They won the first half, and in the second half, they just held on. We were texting throughout the game. It was miraculous to kind of get there. I think there was like a couple of things on the Steelers side. Claymore he wasn't in this game. I think he had negative yards for this game for the Steelers versus his kind of couple of big games in the last few weeks. But again, it was because Malcolm Butler, they were, double teaming Claypool for the entire game. Juju Smith-Schuster had a good game. James O'Connor as well had a great game for Big Ben. Big Ben, he's kind of doing, as I said, like he's not doing anything spectacular at the moment for the Steelers. There's a couple of passes where he was trying to be an Aaron Rodgers or a Mahomes with a couple of these little offloady passes over the pressure. But look, overall, TJ Watt again had another great game for the Steelers, putting pressure on. And just the Tennessee Titans, I think they were just tired. Like they should have finished that game. They had a really good opportunity at the end. And yeah, I think just the Steelers, we held on just about for this one. So, but look, we're 6-0. That's really all that matters at this stage.
So James O'Connor has stopped playing hurling for Clare, by the way. Apparently, he's gone to play running back for the Pittsburgh.
Sorry, James Connor. James Connor. I was watching the Clare game at the weekend as well.
That's two games now. You've rattled in a 3 or 4 touchdowns and then let the other team come back. Just great defense. Everybody keeps alluding to. The Eagles game. The Eagles came back with the opportunity to take the lead, and now this weekend. So time is running out. It's gonna implode soon. This Sunday against the Ravens.
But I'd rather, but again, as a fan, you'd rather be having these sort of games now than at the end of the season, and that's generally what makes a championship team. Is in if you're going to have the slow starts, have them at the start of the season. So I'm not overly worried. I think we're still playing really well. I think the Tennessee Titans, though, they played. I think that was 3 games in 13 days or something like that. So like that's tough on any team. And to be honest, they just made some bad calls as well. And yeah, I think King Henry he ran a couple of more 75 yards for 20 carries. Ryan Tannehill, again, performing out of his socks. I think that's one of the kind of Ryan Tannehill, you've got Derrick Henry, you've got AJ Brown, you've got a couple of really, really quality players for the Tennessee Titans performing at the moment. And I think they're the real story at the moment in the NFL.
Yeah, we said at the start of the season, AFC South, guess who? Like any one of the teams you can make an argument for or against very easily. And the Titans wheeled out, kind of wondered, can they repeat it? Can they reach the heights? They've actually kicked on. Tannehill's playing well. And look, Mike Tomlin, or Will.i.am, as I like to refer to him, did come out in his first comments after the game, which you don't hear from a coach very often, was like, first of all, I just want to say that was an amazing performance by the Tennessee Titans. They fought for it the whole way. They gave us a great game, and it was a great game of football. And we'll probably see, they do say this line all the time, we'll probably see them in the playoffs later on. But it's very possible two of the class acts, probably the AFC, and maybe, just maybe, it's not all about the Chiefs. But we will see next week, Steelers versus Ravens. I said about furious finishes, actually, nothing could be as furious as... Well, actually, we should have said this last week, guys. There were 2 games last weekend. The Lions versus the Falcons and the Bengals versus the Browns, which really, if you think about it, should have been called like the square root of sadness altogether. Because if there are 4 teams that are destined to devastate their fan base at any given time with some completely ridiculous conclusion to a game, it's one of those 4. It's all 4 of those teams. So clearly someone was going to lose in some horrible fashion. I don't quite believe some of the finishes we saw in this game. Brian, I think let's start with the Browns and the Bengals. Let's start with, Dr. Baker and Mr. Mayfield, because he certainly was Jekyll and Hyde in that game as well.
Yeah, but in fairness to him, like, he was getting a lot of pressure after his axing last week, and he threw 4 touchdowns at the weekend, but it's kind of overshadowed in a sense because of the OBJ injury. Like, that's been the main discussion, and obviously now he's gone for the season. But you can't get away from it. He started off poorly, threw that interception, but game on the line, drove down at the end, should have corner into touchdown, and but in fairness to the Bengals as well, like, it's been a long time since we've seen the Bengals so competitive. Like, over the years in that division, they've been getting plowed out of it. But like, Burrow is really coming on. I've been very impressed with him. And just unfortunate again, because the Bengals have put themselves in a position at the end to win the game with the touchdown to Bernard, but they just couldn't pull it out. But again, that's Mayfield. I was actually impressed with him at the weekend. I know he's inconsistent, and I know so far this season he hasn't been delivering, but I felt on Sunday he did his business.
Well, that's why I refer to him as Dr. Baker and then Mr. Mayfield. He started the game 0-5 with an interception, lost OBJ, and then went 22 of 23, including 21 passes completed in a row. And that one at the very end to win the game, seal the game with 11 seconds left, was an absolute peach. Almost as good as Carson Wentz's on Thursday night, Brian, but, I'm sure you don't want me bringing that one up.
No, let's say the better on that one.
And don't forget as well, it's been confirmed now as well, OBJ torn ACL and pretty much gone for the rest of the season. And again, that's going to be heartbreaking for the Browns and the offense. Again, he wasn't playing out of his socks, but he was performing quite well the last few weeks. And he was at least throwing a couple of interceptions for the Browns, or a couple of touchdowns for the Browns.
So, look, last week I kind of alluded to the fact the Browns have had 2 big losses against the Steelers. And Stephen, I love your thoughts on this. They've had 2 big losses to the Steelers and the Ravens. Class teams. They've won all the remainder of their games. Are they a serious wildcard threat? Are they for real? Like, it's almost like if you're a Browns fan, you look at the record and saying, sorry, wake me up again. Is this really what record we've got at the moment? Because, sure, I mean, they've got more wins than they probably had in about 6 seasons combined at one stage during the noughties.
Yeah, like the fashion by the way that they lose and the way they capitulate, I think, when they do lose, they're too inconsistent, although they're capable of putting up numbers. And in fact, what I've found over the years with them is that, again, small amount of years, I guess, but when OBJ is actually in the game, sometimes he acts as more of a distraction. I know that last year, I think Baker Mayfield's numbers when he was thrown into double and triple coverage was crazy because he sees OBJ and just decides to leather it in there because, like, as much as people hate the guy and he's seen on boats, with his top off wearing Timberlands when he shouldn't be and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the guy is a super talented guy. There's the gimmicky one-handed catches, but again, he still has pedigree. He's had his struggles, and I guess he's had problems with, kicking nets and fighting into them at the side of the sideline and stuff like that. But when it all comes down to it, the guy is supremely talented. However, I think that, like, unlike Green Bay, so we focus on Devontae Adams, he pulls it off. Whereas with OBJ in there, sometimes acts as a distraction. But again, the fact that a team can put up like 37, 34, that they went up those numbers, it's promising. But as you said, here's a quarterback who has more adverts on TV than he does touchdowns. So, I don't know, there's always that kind of circus around it. But I'm glad that they're kind of starting to sort stuff out in Cleveland because they looked absolutely hopeless for so long. And at least now they have somewhat of a contender. They reek of a team, though, that will put up some nice wins and be inconsistent in some weeks and then go into maybe the playoffs. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself and then get dumped out straight away. They kind of have that team. But I'm glad there is some glimmer of hope for people who supported Cleveland, like Gordo, you know what I mean? You might find yourself next year throwing on the Baker Mayfield jersey,
Well, good luck is in potentially so, but I wanted to ask you about this one because I think the superstars needed in certain organizations, and I don't think it's Mayfield. It seems to be on the defensive side and Myles Garrett this season. 9 sacks so far. As in, like, is that where you build your franchise around? Because he seems to be the player that kind of decides these games or nearly kind of, I don't know, sets the momentum for them.
Yeah, well, look at Khalil Mack in Chicago. I mean, when, you get him in and then all of a sudden their contenders, Trubisky, looks like he's a world beater and he's holding Green Bay mugs up saying, Green Bay Packer fans tears and all this type of stuff. Yeah, certainly. I mean, if there was ever an indictment for defense wins championships, it was the year Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl with the Broncos. The fact that they benched him for Brock Osweiler, people forget, and then brought him back in again. So yeah, certainly I think the defense is definitely the way to go, particularly when you have sort of a leaky offense, because if they keep you in the game late, God knows what can happen. We've seen a reverse in Green Bay for so many years, but yeah, that's what you need. You need the defense fired on all cylinders week in and week out because, look, that's how the Packers were flying high. They were running rub routes and schemes and people were amazed by them. And then all of a sudden we come up against a stout defense in the Bucs and we look like amateurs, for our anomaly. So, yeah, definitely I think they need to stick with it on that side of the ball.
Great reference to Manning there as well. I think when he broke Favre's passing yard record that season, wasn't that the game he threw 4 interceptions and threw for like 28 yards total, but he just creeped over the line. It was like celebrating one of his worst professional career games. But
yeah, but that's typical fashion though. Look at Brett Favre's interception. So it was kind of fitting in the end, wasn't it? You know what I mean? That sort of gunslinger interception style. Yeah, kind of works.
Actually, talking of Favre as well, I mean, like, for years he went down as the gunslinger, and it might be hard for a Packers fan to accept this one, but I will posit that the best gunslinger in inverted commas, in the NFL these days is actually Matt Stafford of the Detroit Lions, because I don't think Matt Stafford's ever seen a hole or a gap, and even the ones that don't exist, he won't try and fill a ball into. Nothing probably encapsulated that for me more. He's always this red zone quarterback. Something's happened in the fourth quarter. The Lions are a score behind. They'll be on it, and you'll watch it because he will start flinging it around. And last week against the Falcons, Todd Gurley, my God, he did it twice in 2018, stopped at the 1 yard line. This time he kind of forgot to stop at the 1 yard line, so the Falcons could kick the easy field goal and walk away with the win with zeros on the clock. And Stafford going down the field, no timeouts left. The Stafford slings, sidearm slings to Golladay, to Amendola, to Hockenson, gets them into position. Last play of the game, they get there. And the Lions pulled out the heartbreak on the Falcons. I mean, Jesus, the Falcons blowing a fourth quarter lead. What a shocker this season. But also, I just want to call out Golladay and Ridley in this game. We talked about Adams. We talked about A.J. Brown. Two of them in this game, they were having games of parkour against the defenses of the opposition. It was unbelievable performances and catches by both of them all the way through. But yeah, Lions edging out. It's going to be a meaningless game at the end of the day with the records, but what a game and what a finish to watch. Brian?
Yeah, just how you know that Matt Patricia said afterwards that he actually asked the defense to allow goalie to score. Similar circumstances to when Bradshaw scored in the Super Bowl against the Patriots.
2011. I knew you were going there.
It's all on the news. He referred to it after the game. He told the defense to let him score. What I can't understand is where they were. I think they were on the 13, 14 yard line. That's a very kickable field goal for any NFL kicker. So why did Matt Ryan not just take 2 knees? You'd have to wonder.
Well, do you know what? There's been a lot of talk about this. Now, Gurley, as I said, he has kneeled before, like 2018 with the Rams. He twice in games late.
He did it in a game against the Packers 2 years ago.
He knows what to do in those circumstances. He just plain forgot. You're absolutely right. Ryan could have taken a knee, but look what happened at the end of the Seahawks-Cards game, which I know we're going to come to as well. They told Kyler Murray to take a knee to put him on the right hash, and the tight end forgot to block. They lost 5 yards. They missed the kick to win it in the first kick to win it in overtime. So things can still go wrong. I don't have an issue in Gurley getting the ball and driving through. I have an issue with him not being told 60 million times, including in the huddle by Ryan, including by every single member of his offensive line, including by, his girlfriend in the stands. Don't fucking go into the end zone and stop. Like,
well, he tried to stop, in fairness. He did try. Just somehow managed to let it go.
The lorry slowly going on its side, veering in. But yeah.
Mark, I picked the Lions for this game, and I think we're getting away from the fact that the Lions are 3-3, and they really should have beaten the Bears. And a lot of people are giving Patricia a lot of stick. They're actually better than what people think. They're coming along nicely. And I fancy them this weekend again against the Colts.
Brian, Matt Patricia is still getting fired this season.
He may be getting fired, but everybody's so down on them. They're 3-3. They're not that bad.
Well, there is a team actually who is that bad, and that's the New York Giants. As I alluded to, if we're talking about furious finishes, they did lose on the last second. 10 seconds to go. Carson Wentz with a great throw to Boston Scott. But Brian, I don't want to dwell on this game too much because all anybody really wants to talk about is Daniel Jones being tackled by a gust of wind from the direction of the stands. But they're up 21-10 in the fourth quarter. There's only about 5 minutes left to go. I know it's heartbreaking for you, but, how are you feeling in relation to it? At least they scored after Daniel Jones fell down.
Stephen touched on earlier the world of an NFL fan, where especially over this side of the world, where you're going to bed at crazy hours, and you're up for work the next morning. Friday was a terrible day.
Yeah, it's harder after a loss, isn't it?
20
hard to justify, right?
At 4:15 in the morning, I'm saying to myself, I don't care about 2 hours sleep now. We're going to win and potentially be the top of the division. 20 minutes later, it's just like they just caved, And I keep touching on it, and it's getting boring now. We're just a team that doesn't know how to win a game, and unfortunately, we're well in these games. Like of the six defeats, we've potentially had an opportunity to win 5 of them. It's crazy. But
I will be honest, because I'm equally as sick as you, even though it isn't my team. I was up watching that game late. I was working late.
You felt sorry for me, is that what you're going to say?
Was that?
You felt sorry for me, did you?
I did. Well, no, I felt sorry for you at one point. I was very tempted to text you when Daniel Jones fell over. And the reason why is just before the snap, I kind of went, in my mind, don't know why, it was like 92 yards to go. And something flashed in my mind about Terrell Pryor. Remember he played for the Raiders, 93 yards first play from scrimmage against Gordo, the Pittsburgh Steelers, sprinting it down the field. And I thought, geez, 92 yards, that would almost be the longest QB run. Comes on the bootleg, running down the field, and then yeah, he fell.
We did score. We did score within that drive. So I really don't see what people are getting so hung up about. Yeah,
bloody funny, Brian. That's
it's butt fumble level highlight reel stuff.
It can't be. It's not.
Oh, it is. It is.
It's the highest speed ever run by an NFL quarterback. So here we go.
That's the thing. And it doesn't matter. And that's the thing. No one cares.
I love how you searched for that stat just to have some bit of positivity.
It popped up on my phone on Friday morning. Like I was like, Ian Rappaport puts it up, and I'm kind of going, as if I really care. Can I just make one more point? Jones is a big threat with his legs, and they don't utilize him enough. And that last drive when Ingram dropped the ball to potentially to put the game away on second down, there was a similar situation again. They could have done the run pass option, and he could have taken it away himself. I just don't understand why I don't want a situation where he's like Cam or he's like Jackson or even he's still not being used enough in that situation.
Because the problem is, while he's a threat with his legs, he's equally just as bad a threat to his team when the ball's in his hands, because he still needs to cure the fumbles.
It's not as bad as it was. Anyway.
It
was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
To mention a couple of brief stats, of course, you all noticed that Tom Brady threw for 4 touchdowns and now has thrown for the most touchdowns in all time, overtaking Drew Brees by 1. I'm sure Brees will overtake him again, and it will oscillate between the two of them.
You're smiling like you did him for the Patriots, Mark.
I'm smiling because I like Tom Brady, and I still am enamored with the fact that he scored 531 of those 559 or whatever it is touchdowns with the Patriots. But they handled the Raiders in a game that was closer than the scoreline suggested. They pulled away in the fourth quarter with a couple of turnovers.
In that game, Mark, as well, Tom Brady and everything that's going on at the moment, has he found his Julian Edelman lookalike in Scotty Miller? Because it just seems like it's a new BFF relationship down there with this small, short, wide receiver that just reminds me of Julian Edelman.
So, Gord, I'll tell you 2 things. One, if you remember in our preseason, I called out.
You did call out Scotty Miller, you did.
But the second thing is Miller's a lot faster than Edelman. Miller's a lot speedier. He's a bit more of a downfield threat. Great play on the 40-yarder, I think. And Miller will do the underneath. Chris Godwin's out for a while now, surgery on a broken finger, so they've still got some challenges with their weapons. But they've decided to break the bank and bring in Antonio Brown, which is just an outrageous move. Which again, it just shows you that Tom Brady was the catalyst behind him going to the Patriots, and it's the only reason he's at the Bucs, because I guarantee you Bruce Arians and the likes had no interest in bringing Antonio Brown there.
Arians even said that, though, didn't he? They questioned him and he said he's got no space in our locker room. Yeah.
It's a mad move. It makes absolutely no sense, and just for the political landscape, everything, I'm just baffled by the Bucs wanting to even do this. But again, it just shows you, when you're Brady, you dictate, you decide, and that's why he's at the Bucs and not in the Patriots.
He's ruling the roost there. That's clear to see. They're going over the top on it now, in the sense that they feel this is a big opportunity this year, and the extra play they need.
And don't forget, they have lost OJ Howard. Mike Evans is clearly still injured. Chris Godwin now has an injury, as alluded to as well. You're relying upon, a few talents there. So
they could have brought Des Bryant in.
It makes sense from a football point of view. I definitely think from a, emotional, personal, good taste point of view, there's much to be said. But look, we could talk long and hard about different things. Yeah. Jesus Christ, Brady played with a double murderer, for Christ's sake. If you perform on the field, there's a different standard. He was okay.
I'm not entirely sure I knew about that, though, Mark. Let us help you hide the weapon there if you start catching some passes. So I don't know.
He didn't catch that one in the end zone in the Super Bowl, Mark. Remember the Hail Mary? Drop that one. Anyway, just started my.
Anyway, moving swiftly on.
We're talking about a game that was 9 years ago. That's how much Brian's trying to live in the past. Anyway, in other news, John Bostic, who's been he's been a solid middle linebacker for many years. I can only think that in one moment of madness, Vontaze Burfict actually died, and his spirit was transported into John Bostic's body to commit what can only be described as some kind of grievous bodily harm on poor Ginger Rogers, Andy Dalton. Brutal hit, rightfully ejected from the game. Wouldn't have made a difference anyway, the Cowboys were losing that game, which they did lose 35-3. It did mean we saw a lesser spotted appearance by what I believe is commonly referred to as a Ben DiNucci, which, if you needed to know anything about Ben DiNucci, their 7th round pick who played a few snaps in the absence of Dalton, he was formerly the backup to Nathan Peterman in college. There's it all. We don't need to go any further.
No, yeah.
I thought it was telling the reaction of the Cowboys players when the hit went in. Not one player came to Dalton's defense, which doesn't need bode well for McCarthy's situation there if the players aren't, rallying around their own players.
I think that was the interesting point, I think. But again, somebody came out and said, well, look, the offensive line itself is just a mix mash of whoever they can try and pull together in Dallas. But even still, like, when somebody gets hit like that, as dangerously they got hit, you would expect your teammates to rally around you. And then the fact that Jerry Jones has to come out and confirm that Mike McCarthy is his man, he's got his man, and that there's no fear with Mike McCarthy going. I don't know. It's Jerry world. I don't think you can be too surprised about anything happening there.
Yeah, you do have to remember, though, guys, the Cowboys are starting 4 reserves on the offensive line. They were still probably trying to figure out who Andy Dalton was at the time. It's like, is he with us? Oh, right. Okay, we're supposed to protect him. Got it. Patriots clearly had a great performance. They scored twice the amount of points the Cowboys were able to muster. But other than that, went down 33-6 to the 49ers. Jimmy GQ came back to Foxborough and threw 2 interceptions. It wouldn't have mattered anyway. I'll get it on record now. Cam Newton, the first 3 games of the season, I was going, no, this could work. This could work. Good game against the Seahawks. Obviously he was out for the Chiefs. And last week even I was saying, it's a bit rusty. We'll come back. On Sunday, guys, Cam Newton, there were at least 3 passes. He's one hop and everything, but there were at least 3 passes my grandmother could have thrown better. And my grandmother's been dead since 2003. So that just sums up how awful it is watching him.
Can I ask, since we have a well-rounded NFL aficionado and Stephen here, is in with Brady gone, what was it? What was the magic within New England, in your opinion, Stephen? Because Mark still seems to claim it's Belichick, and that was the only reason for it. But I don't know. What's wrong there? Can they fix without Brady? Or
it's hard to know, because do you know what? They still have an awful lot of the coaching staff there, right? Isn't that what? Have you read the book Dynasty? All about the fallout and stuff. Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't that? But it's such a fascinating storyline. This way, I love it. Like, this why there is radio slots about, like, the catchy sort of NFL headlines. I don't know. I thought Belichick had their number, and I thought he pulled a fast one, because isn't any time sort of a troubled player gets cut, they cut to that Belichick coming onto the field during the 100-year NFL celebration or whatever. I really thought he could make it work, because even in their last what's that? A Football Life sort of, what's that? What do they call that program after the Super Bowl thing? Where they talk about where they struggled in December. And they were able to
America's Game, sorry.
America's Game, yeah. So they were able to sort of rally back in December and change what was going on behind the scenes and all this type of stuff. And by the sounds of it, Brady and Belichick and McDaniels and everything else, they were at his throat the odd time, and they didn't get along, but they found out a way to make it work. I still thought Belichick was going to pull this thing off, but I don't know, Mark, maybe you know better. I mean, is this warning bells for Belichick? Does he stick it out? Because, Alex Ferguson was going to quit, and then all of a sudden, QPR game, they bang in the goal, and then he stays around, hoping that he's going to make something work. Is that what we're going to see from Belichick here? Does he just keep hanging around just to try and make it work again?
Belichick is definitely hanging around a couple of seasons. He feels passionately about his legacy. It's one of the reasons why he did a Football Life. He let them, the NFL cameras in behind the scenes. Growing up with Steve Belichick, a long-time scout, long-time involved, he cares about how he's perceived in 30, 40 years' time, which is why things like Spygate and stuff like that, while he doesn't admit it, kind of people know not to cross it, because he just does not want to focus on that. He wants to focus on building a team, building a culture, building an establishment, and obviously wins the championships and stuff like that. That's why he also enjoys them. But I can't see him wanting to throw in the towel because he'll want to prove, hey, he's the GOAT in coaching, just like Brady's the GOAT in quarterbacking. And so, at the moment, maybe Newton returns to see the form he showed in the first 3 games, different style of offense. Maybe people have just adjusted. But I think really, as a Patriots fan, you are kind of looking and saying, well, Trevor Lawrence is going to be off the draft board, but what about Landry Fields? What about, heard lots about Mac Jones, you know what I mean? You start scaring the college quarterbacks. And maybe Belichick will come back to that. He'll say, okay, I want to draft someone and make it happen. He was going to do it with Jimmy G. Remember, Jimmy GQ. It was part of the plan, the succession plan for Brady, like the Packers have done, obviously, very, very successfully with Favre and into Rodgers and now potentially into Jordan Love. I don't
key to this, Mark, I think, is the key to it is that if you look at recent history and you're a newer fan, and you see the struggles that they have, it's very hard to contextualize it because they could right the ship and then all of a sudden he looks like a genius again. But the main thing for me is you have to look at Belichick's pedigree before he got to New England and understand how successful he has been, even before Brady. And that's the deal here, is that he's in it for the long haul. It's like getting into an investment strategy and you lose money on day 2 and you're like, that's it, I'm cashing out, I'm leaving, that's I need to get out of this thing, it's a disaster. When really you have to stick it in for the long haul. And it's and like kind of what you alluded to, it's an incredibly hard thing that they did. Brady's style of play, and like what they were alluding to with the Bucs game, and they were saying, oh, Brady's thrown this pass for 20 years now, he knows that play because that's his designed play. And similarly, Brady will have stuff that he was good at in his strength that does not fit at all with the style of quarterback that they have now. So they have to go and adapt their system around them and find out a way to make it work. And it's not going to be a 1, 2, 3 game thing.
No. And just to say on that as well, the Patriots have drafted pretty poorly the last 3 or 4 drafts. Like, we do not have an influx of young talent there. They're still, I think, the oldest team in the NFL on record. Yeah. So he does need a couple of years to get it right. If he gets it right in a couple of years and you've got a good young quarterback and they become a 10-win team consistently again, then I say Belichick actually stays on for a different reason. And the reason he stays on then is to beat Shula's wins record.
Yeah.
And he will actually have that in his sights because he's not that far away. I think he's about 30 odd wins away. Now, if you go through a couple of seasons winning 6, that 5 or 6, that takes a long time to get there. If he gets back up to consistency levels. Look, we could talk years about this. The consistency of Green Bay have shown in terms of their quarterback draft and that preparation is magnificent. The consistency New England have shown over 20 years as a team trying to keep that standard up there, driven, of course, by both their leading lights, is unbelievable. I mean, the consistency the Steelers have shown over 40, 50 years, committing to head coaches, developing in their ethos, their system. They've got multiple Super Bowl winning head coaches for the simple reason they went from Noel to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin, and they stuck with them over the years. And the consistency of the New York Giants missing the playoffs every season is unbelievably
That's
exciting.
Commitment, right? Commitment to awfulness. But the thing as well is people keep thinking about Belichick in retirement, but he's not actually that old. Like we talked about Romeo Crennel. What age is he? 74? And then you look at Belichick and you just assume because the dynasty has come to an end that, he should just walk away and go off into the limelight. Well, but as you said, it's not in his character, really. Yeah,
a number of years ago, he said in an interview, I don't want to be like Marv Levy, the famous Buffalo Bills coach, or Joe Gibbs even, I think he alluded to as well, the old Washington Redskins coach, where I'm coaching into my 70s. Like, that's what he initially said. He, I think, turns 70 next year or the year after. I think he's 68 at the moment. But it looks very close like he will. Like, I mean, he used to say, I won't do that, but we'll see.
No, but look, these lifers find it hard to walk away, though. I mean, they always say, oh, there's no way I'm going to do that. And it's a different story when it comes, right?
Mark, do you think he would walk away at some stage if he felt his son was ready to take on the role?
Interesting one. I would love to be a fly on the wall of the conversations that Robert Kraft's had with Josh McDaniels, actually, more than anything. Like, he would seem to be the heir apparent in many ways. But yeah, Steve Belichick is now calling the plays in there. His other son as well is a scouting assistant, I think, in his 3rd year. Maybe Steve Belichick, for example, has to, or Steven, I should call him, because Steve was his dad, maybe he has to leave, like Don Shula's son had to leave. Mike Shula went off to the Carolina Panthers at one point to be the head coach there because he feel like he has to establish his own basis and his own rights. But hey,
I think the better example there would have been Kyle Shanahan more so than Shula. Shula's bounced around as offensive coordinator in a number of places since.
I would disagree with that one for the simple reason is Kyle Shanahan mostly followed Mike around the place. Like most of his offensive coordinator gigs were following. But yeah, no, it's another good one that probably Shula was obviously in my mind, but you're right. Shanahan's a better, more recent example.
We're going to talk about the elephant in the room here and also discuss if he has the worst haircut in sports. I mean, I think that's more important than wins and losses in playbooks here.
As a fan of the Green Bay Packers, who for many years had Clay Matthews on their team, haircuts, we're going there.
I know Stephen has a soft spot for Clay.
Yeah, because look at that. I mean, I'm poking out the back here, so I'm growing a lockdown man bun myself. I can't say anything. It's always the follically challenged as well, isn't it?
Mark has been growing that bun for 20 years, yes.
It's the only reason I have a beard, you know? It's the only reason I have a beard.
But come here, let's bring it back to the action. And one game we absolutely have to talk about. We talked about Daniel Jones being tackled by a breath of fresh air. DK Metcalf, however, for the Seahawks, is also able to tackle, and he's also able to move faster than Cheetah, it would seem, in many ways, because he did directly save a touchdown. And then, of course, the Cards didn't pump it in. Didn't save them in another absolute thriller. We're talking about 71-point thrillers again, guys. The Seahawks lost their unbeaten record to the Cards. I won't say which one of us on the pod called that the Seahawks were due to run out of time and that the Cards would win this game.
Me.
We don't need to dwell on that. We don't need to dwell on that, guys. It's fine. But it was definitely a defense's optional game, as we talked about before. The coaching towards the end was appalling, and Russell Wilson proved human. 3 touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. The last one, obviously, being the biggest killer. We've been talking about stud wide receivers. Tyler Lockett, 15 receptions, 200 yards, 3 TDs. It happens. But, guys, we could talk. We're talking for hours already, but we could talk for hours about this particular game. 4 different times the Hawks had a 10-point lead, including the last one when they went for it on 4th and 2, got the touchdown, 6:44 left to go. They're up 34-24. And still the Cards came back and still they won the game. Like, where do we begin?
I suppose when you have Kyler Murray, your quarterback, you're never really out of the game. And they threw down by 10 points at halftime, got it back close, and obviously Seattle pulled away again. But more to the point, Wilson, we kind of touched on it last week, you know, he's having to win the games for Seattle. And at some stage that tends to kind of, your luck runs out. And their defense is just so poor. You just can't seem to get anything right on defense. We alluded to it in our season previews that they just didn't do anything to address the issues on defense, and it was purely down to Wilson to try and carry the team. And you know, he carried the team and they had their opportunity to win. But fairness to the Cards, you have called it for a while that they seem to be the real deal, and with Hopkins they're a different animal this year.
I think myself and Mark from the get-go pointed out the Cardinals' offensive weapons more than anything else, and I think that was evident this weekend. And you look at the stats here, like, as in the love was really shared between the wide receivers. You had everyone contributing, from Hopkins with 103 yards all the way down to Kirk, which was 37 yards but 2 touchdowns. And yeah, I think it's just our biggest question about Kyler Murray was we knew he could run, and again he made some tacklers miss big time at the weekend. But the question was, could he get into the consistency where you would trust him to make the passes? And this was a game where he stepped up, and it was really, really impressive to see. So, look, I'm delighted we were high. Myself and Mark were very high in the Cardinals in the offseason. I think because of how they've shaped the wide receiver group. And I don't know, I think it could be the start, hopefully, for the Cardinals.
The division, you look at the division, if we're joking about the NFC East, like there's four teams in that division. The likelihood is probably 3 of them with the new expanded playoffs. The likelihood is 3 of them may come out. You know, 2 of them could be wild cards, and then 1 falls out. It could be the Niners that falls out, who haven't been to the Super Bowl. But
very, very easily, all of them are above 500, and much as we say about the NFC least instead of the NFC East, it's definitely the NFC West is the NFC's best. So,
smooth.
I like that.
Yeah, but that DK Metcalf run, I've watched that highlight, I'd say about 100 times today. Like the effort, like Wilson had given up. It was it was just mad. It was out of nowhere. It was what a effort just to showcase that, and then also not to let them touch on afterwards. Like regardless of the result, that's what you want. You want that to be rewarded. It was a great highlight clip, and it was hilarious listening to. I think it was Collinsworth was on the comms for it, and it was brilliant watching him call it out. Yeah, so it was good. It was just a highlight of the weekend, I think, for one of the ones.
It's also lovely to see him chasing down the smaller cornerback. It's almost like, a gazelle being hunted down by, a kind of a lion type of thing. He's like, he's a magnificent specimen of a man. I know that's how weird that sounds, but he's built like a brick shithouse. Guys, he's unbelievable. And he's just launching after him and catching him. And also, he didn't even pause. The second it was intercepted, he's away. There isn't even this, oh crap, what happened? He's away and hunts him down. He was ineffective at the rest of the game. Patrick Peterson was basically in coverage on him, cut him down to 2 catches. That's also why Lockett had such an amazing game, because Arizona, you do actually need 2 cornerbacks at least. That would help. But yeah, I mean, look, just a great game. Neither of them can defend. The Cards can be stopped if you stop Murray. They've had, a couple of very poor offensive games and then some amazing offensive games. But what entertainment! I mean, like, I kind of called it at the start, guys. There was a lot of great finishes, to games this weekend. I mean, 6 p.m. games, late games, Thursday night games. It was all drama and excitement, which is why we love it. There were other games we haven't touched on that weren't as exciting. Chargers beat the Jags 39-29, which was good if you had the overs, but not much to write home from other than Justin Herbert is the real deal. Chiefs, of course, handled the Broncos. I mean, it's like a big brother beating up the little brother constantly in that relationship at the moment. But Mahomes et al. Did what they needed to do in snow in October in Colorado. So 43-16 there. But if you don't mind, and Buffalo versus the Jets, 18-10 with 6 field goals. I mean,
I was watching the scoreline for this game because I had big money on this one, and I don't know what happened. I honestly, I don't know. Like, how did the Bills play like that?
They said that at halftime, the Bills made 2 adjustments on defense. That's all, and literally just completely wiped out the Jets for the entire second half. They only had 2 yards of offense in the second half. The Jets, just goes to show how bad it is that you can just make quick adjustment on the fly and literally changes the entire game. But the Bills have kind of slowed down a little. They're playing the Patriots this weekend. I mean, they couldn't get into the end zone at all. They won 6 field goals against the poor Jets team. So,
I mean, guys, no matter what you are in this world, and if you're having a bad day, if you're suffering with COVID, if you're family life or work life, financial sort of troubles in life and everything, just remember this. All 4 of you on this pod right now, I want you to remember, at least you're not a Jets fan. That's something to keep you sucker through life.
Imagine having all of those troubles and being a Jets fan. Now you're just rubbing it in.
You're going off the cliff then.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, okay. I mean, like this, as I alluded to the other week, is the state of New York is still technically perfect with unbeaten wins so far this season. The state of New Jersey, though, bloody awful with only 1 win between their 2 teams. So,
Mark, 1 game out of division lead. Thanks very much.
2-13-1 still continues to be the non-divisional NFC least record. So
if someone tells me at the start of the season that come the end of October we're only 1 game out of the top of the division, sure, I take that every year.
So again, Stephen, I think we alluded to it in the last couple of pods, but the last time we had a 7-9 division champion was the Seattle Seahawks in 2010, and they actually famously won a playoff game against the Saints because they were at home and the Beastquake came that season. We could legitimately, it's becoming more real each week, have a 6-10 division winner in the NFC East. I like seeing history made, even for the wrong reasons. So we'll see.
That makes one of the 4 of us. No, but do you know what they're saying? That they should do like an all-star team from the NFC East and just send all their best players like the Pro Bowl, because it's just shocking to send 1 team through. I mean, is there a way that we can just eliminate the whole division and just like, that's why you need relegation, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's why relegation does an awful lot of merit in it.
Can we replace the Jets with like the Atlanta Falcons? Not the Atlanta Falcons. Replace the Jets with like Alabama, and then maybe
what it comes to.
Mark, you're 2-4. Do you not to be crying about at the moment?
Yeah, we're 2-4, Brian. It's still not 1-5.
There's a big gulf between that.
That one game, yeah.
Well, look, again, actually, it's not that funny, but I mean, the AFC East, I was saying about the NFC East. The AFC East, it's got the Dolphins at 3-3, Pats at 2-4, and then the Jets. So it's not anything to write home for about either.
And it's two time this weekend. You haven't even touched on that yet, Mark.
So sorry, yeah, that was the point. Myself and Brian we met up on Friday for a coffee chat about just everything NFL for a few minutes, and that was the one we were talking about. If you're Fitzmagic, like, you must be distraught, because again, this is kind of the point where you're actually playing good football, and they brought in Tua, which obviously was picked because he's going to be the future franchise, but it's kind of, it smells of history again. Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, it's just repeating itself. And Kurt Warner was actually on with the Rich Eisen show, and it's well worth listening to him and talk about it, because now it's about how does Fitzmagic support Tua. But yeah, as Brian said, it's Tua time. It's madness to, if you're Fitzmagic, like, he was cheering Tua when he came on for those few snaps at the end of last game, not realizing he was not going to be the star. Yeah, little did he know. Like, it's
that was very much a player cheering him on, thinking there's no way he'll be replacing me. So there was always a conversation that they were going to do it at the bye week, but obviously the bye week got changed because of the COVID situation. So they've gone ahead with the plan, albeit 7 weeks earlier.
Yeah, and then Fitzmagic found out in the press. So he said that was bad form. So Flores had to have that meeting with him and say, look, sorry, the way it all came out, it's just what it is. And the fact that Fitzmagic said it was heartbreaking and his heart hurt all day, you've got to feel for the guy. I mean, this is a guy as well, he's been pretty good. I mean, he broke Joe Namath's records with the Jets. So, I mean, he's been pretty stellar wherever he's gone. But again, it's reckless abandon with him, isn't it? If he can sling the ball around wherever he wants, because he kind of comes in to sweep up after the franchise has become a bit of a mess.
When he runs, he's not putting the head away anyway. He'll take the hits.
Yeah.
What Joe Namath record was that exactly, Stephen? Winning 2 games?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was where how good can you look in tight adverts? I think he was put on the tights. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know actually what records that he broke, but there was a bunch of them that were like, oh, he's after surpassing him. Yeah. And again, the legendary name like Namath. Now again, I know it's a more sort of pass heavy league nowadays, than back in the day when Namath was pulling on the tights. But there you go. But again, it's one of those guys, isn't it? Like Tyrod Taylor, he's a perpetual backup all the time, can come in and perform depending on the atmosphere. But as you say, weird timing. I wonder if Tua plays bad, do they say, let's pull him and put Fitzmagic back in, or do you have to roll with Tua now to keep that confidence level up? Who knows?
I think it's too soon, to be honest with you. I would have given Tua longer on the benches to learn. You look at what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. Of course, they have Alex Smith, who I would raise a better quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick overall. But the idea that he sat behind him, only played in the 16th game that season, made a lot of sense to me. I thought they were going to do the same with Tua. Maybe, when they're technically out of playoff options, maybe week 12 or 13, bring him out. But
Stephen, to your point about the Tyrod Taylor reference, as in he had to be stabbed in the heart or in the lung to be taken out of
by the team doctor.
Sabotaged by the team doctor. But the point was made on
enough.
But the point was made on an American talk show that, again, if you're the head coach, like Miami have said, no, we can see how good Tua is, he is the future, we need to play him. Like, Anthony Lynn was going to stick with Tyrod Taylor. He had no intention of playing Justin Herbert, and now Justin Herbert is turning out to be he's probably the franchise type quarterback. That's just, I don't know, mismanagement, or everyone says you can tell how good somebody is in training and how well they're performing, but like, for just the Justin Herbert one was forced. Like, we might not have seen him this season only for that rogue doctor in the background.
Yeah, but they were protecting him, Gordo. I don't have an issue with that. Justin Herbert still probably has the prettiest deep ball in the NFL already, I would say. I just love watching that, him throw that. But they were protecting him. I get that. They're managing the talent. They're managing the asset appropriately. I mean, yeah, it's great to see him, but it's not like Joe Burrow where they have to play him straight off the games. And hey, look again at Mahomes. Like, they managed him correctly. Chicago Bears put Mitch Trubisky straight in there. How did that work out? So
delicious.
Yeah. I can imagine, Steve, actually you'll like this stat if you hadn't seen it before. I saw it on the Bears Rams game the other night. The Bears have had 51 starters at quarterback since the inception of the NFL. And out of those, they've only had 2 Pro Bowl seasons, the lowest of any team across the NFL, including the more recently formed teams. And those 2 seasons were Jim McMahon in 85 and Mitch Trubisky in 2018.
Sick.
Whatever I say about Green Bay quarterbacking, like, is Bears quarterbacking just like the direct opposite? It's like some kind of bizarro world that exists, perhaps.
Yeah, my favorite Bears quarterback ever was Jay Cutler, because he used to throw to more Packers than our own quarterbacks at times. So I mean, it was just incredible. You know what I mean? You could just fool him so easily. And then
he's got divorced since as well, because his missus said he needed to get a job. Yeah, it's true. He got divorced in the last year. She wasn't happy with him being lazing around the house all the time with his 60-70 million in his bank accounts. You know, she said he needed to get out and get a job, so he kicked her out of the house by all accounts. So I'm reliably told by our Bears fan, Mr. Dowling.
I think he deserves a break, doesn't he? I mean, Jesus, 70 million in, you know. Yeah, but again, he's one of those guys that, like, you know, the smoking Jay Cutler memes where, like, he'd have that face that looked like he had the cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And then you watch a snippet of that program he was on, and he's exactly like you think he would be. It was so nice, because I hate that refreshing thing of like, oh, he's nothing like you think he is. Jay Cutler is exactly who you think he is. But yeah, the Bears, they're just brilliant to watch. That's why the moniker that we always say that all Packers fans know since the days have gone by are the Bears still suck, and they still suck. It's amazing. And you see they're going to maybe bench Foles now and bring Trubisky back in again. I mean, it's just delicious.
When you reference quarterbacks that you think will sound or act like you think they would, it was Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show recently, and he's done a couple of stints now with it's Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk, is it?
AJ Hawk, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great show, but he is just so deadpan and down to earth, and he just seems like a pretty cool dude, to be honest. But he told a really good story about the Indominic Sue kind of controversy and debacle there. But yeah, there's a quarterback where you just think of somebody that's just laid back and just doesn't give a shit.
No, he doesn't. You know? No, again, he's Marmite stuff. Some people don't like him and they delve into his family life and all this type of stuff. But if you had an opinion of him, of being like, some people think he's arrogant, and if you watch that show with Pat McAfee, it's a good insight. But again, this is a cerebral guy. He plays with the media. He doesn't care. He knows that what he says goes off, and he's pretty much coming out with a different trope on the McAfee show every single week, where people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that." You know, like he said, a down year for me is a career year for another quarterback. You know, and if you hear that without any context, you're thinking, well, that's exactly the arrogance I expected to come from him. But again, yeah, we're loving it because it's a great bit of insight, because he's a very private guy. Like, we've had players on the podcast, like, you know, Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels, Mason Crosby a couple of times. I've reached out to Aaron Rodgers, and his agents say that they'll contact his other agents. So his agents have agents. So that's how hard it is to get to him, you know, because I think he probably prefers talking non-football related stuff than he does football related stuff. Because he's a clever guy. He's only done, I think, maybe one other podcast, and that was some science podcast where he didn't really talk about football at all. And he got on with the guy because the guy had no idea he was a quarterback. He knew he was a sports person, and then he Googled him before he came on the show, and he was like, "Oh, damn," and start getting all starstruck. But he was talking about aliens and all this type of stuff. Interesting dude, all right.
Because I only ever heard him on the Rich Eisen show in the after the second or third game of the season, and then the Pat McAfee show. He's just one of those kind of guys, just doesn't do it, stays out of the limelight. Sorry, Mark, taking up all the time on this podcast, just talking absolutely random.
It's a great wide-ranging chat, and actually on Aaron Rodgers, I was about to say about, I've heard of his interest in UFOs, but also just interest in kind of looking at things from a different perspective and a different way. And I just also realised I forgot to call out at the start, Stephen. We're talking about the UK and Irish Packers, and you're having players on. You actually represent the biggest podcast, the biggest kind of grouping of Packers fans outside the US in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, it's a testament to the efforts and the work you and the team have continued to put in there, which is great. But we do need to move from the past into the future. So let's turn our attentions to next week's games and the quick picks, because we've obviously covered a lot of ground today. So I'm just going to call out the games and the line, guys. If you just give me your pick for the game really quickly. So we start Falcons at the Panthers. Falcons plus 2.5 is current line.
Well, I'll go first. I'm going to go with the Falcons to cover this one. I think Arthur Blank is going to stay away from the sideline, and they might actually win a game.
Interesting. Not for me. I think Matt Rhule is still bringing the Panthers in the right direction. So no, I think the Panthers will win and cover.
Yeah, I'd go Panthers as well. I'd always try to go Falcons. It always ends up an egg in the face. So yeah.
I can't trust money anywhere near the Falcons, so I'll take the Panthers as well with the points. Moving to the Sunday games, another team you can't really trust with money ever. The Colts going to the Lions. The Lions are plus 2.5 at the moment.
Touched on it earlier. I'm high on the Lions. And with Rivers a quarterback, I don't trust him. And I think the Lions defense will get after him. Lions with the points, yeah, definitely take the Lions at home.
Yeah, I've been against the Lions all season, but old man Rivers, I do not put money anywhere near him. So I'm going Detroit Lions for this game.
I'll be boring. I go witches, lads. Anytime I bet on the Colts, they lose. So they're going to win this time. Bet on the Lions.
I despise the team, but Rivers had a great outing the last game before the bye. He's had a bye to recover a bit more and rest the weary bones. I'm going to take the Colts in it.
That's a shocker, Mark.
Rams at the Dolphins. I did see a line before the Rams played yesterday. It was -9.5 against the Dolphins. I'd say the line will probably finish about there somewhere.
That's -4 at the moment, Mark.
Is it 4?
Yeah, 4. So I think welcome to the NFL. To it. No, I think the Rams will win and cover. Yeah.
Easy Rams win for this one, I think.
Same. I'd like to be the hipster and say the Dolphins, but it's not going to happen.
Ditto. Tua is going to have a welcome to the NFL time with Aaron Donald, certainly. Rams all the way. Raiders at the Browns. Browns -2.5. Two teams that can be like Marmite, to use Stephen's expression from earlier, certainly up and down.
Don't trust that Raiders defense. Browns, as you said, with the exception of the tough divisional games they've lost, they're beating everybody else, and I think that'll continue. The Browns, I think it's a good handicap, 2.5. Fancy the Browns at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Browns in this one. I'm also going to go with the overs at 54. I think it'll be a fairly high-scoring game, so I'm going to go with that. But yeah, Browns at -2.5, definitely.
Yeah, I have to go. Again, it's really boring. I should say some controversial stuff like, oh, definitely the Raiders, don't choose. But yeah, Browns as well. The Raiders shocked me with the Chiefs game, but yeah, I think it's Browns all day.
I don't trust them. I don't like them. I don't really know if I want to back them, but the Browns as well. I'm with you guys. If you want to be controversial, Stephen, next game, Packers against the Vikings. Packers -7.
Tough one. I'm going to go the Packers just for my heart. You know what I mean? No, look, Matt LaFleur's going to dial up some pretty clever motion stuff, and the Vikings are just a burning dumpster fire. So I'm going to go Packers, I think, on this one.
Yeah, I think if I was Brian, this would be making into the bets of the weekend. I hope, but I'm going to be going with the Packers at -7. I think Aaron Rodgers he's just going to be on fire. I think this could be a very, very embarrassing game for the Vikings.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, Gordon. There's a last man standing competition, and I've gone with the Packers, and I've managed to pull in -6.5 for the price that's needed to get in today. So yeah, Packers to cover.
Pack all the way.
It's getting very boring this week, Mark. There's loads of different picks.
Yeah, well, we might change up the next few. Patriots against the Bills. The Bills are -3.5 up in Buffalo.
Bills cover, easy.
Yeah, sorry, Mark, man. Just to upset you for this one, like, as in, I appreciate that the Bills were shite against the Jets. Like, it was a poor game to even think about. But I've been high on the Bills all season, and I'm continuing that route. And yeah, Bills to cover.
Snoozer for me, lads. Bills as well.
It's the Bills, and I don't want to talk about it.
I love that this is recorded as well, lads. We can just keep playing that back.
Yeah.
Oh no, I sent him one 2 weeks ago because I picked the Broncos 2 weeks ago, and in the podcast he goes, "We will not lose this game." So I recorded it. I snipped it and sent it to him straight afterwards.
That's the blooper podcast sorted, so lads, for the season's end.
Anyway, let's talk about the Jets again, because they're also playing an unbelievable line. I actually saw this higher. I think it's at the moment about 19.5. I did see it at 20.5 against the Chiefs.
It's at 19 at the moment, standing at 19 across most of the bookies.
It was plus 13 last week against the Bills, and we saw what sort of a game it was. As in, like, plus 19. I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Glenn, you go. You go first, Brian. Like, I'm unsure.
Jesus, lads, it's the Chiefs. For fuck's sake, they're going to win it by about 26
Jesus,
points.
Language, Mark. There is young people that listen to this podcast as well, you know. The Chiefs are going to cover, but I don't think the over will happen. At 48.5, I think that's a bit of a stretch because I don't see the Jets scoring, to be honest. So I can see Mahomes sitting on the bench by the fourth quarter.
I'm actually going to go just for a bit of fun for this and to watch. I'm going to go for the Jets at plus 19 because it's such a massive spread. I'm just going to go controversial and go plus 19 for the Jets.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I think it's one of those ones that stand out, and this is the ones when I'm doing the radio act, I'm like, oh, it's a lock. But you know what? The Chiefs are going to win, obviously, but I think it's going to be closer than people think for no reason whatsoever.
Exactly, and that's why, Stephen, I'm with you on that, because after what the Bills and the Jets was last week, and I'm like, anytime you see these big spreads, they scare me now. So yeah, that's why.
And the team going in always think they're going to walk it, and they never do. Then they sort of start to struggle then when it gets a bit tough. So yeah.
Yeah. Lads, I hope we're clipping this one and replaying this one next week anyway.
We're clipping this one.
Clipping your wings.
A big game, however. This is for AFC North supremacy. Steelers against the Ravens. Ravens giving -3.5 at home. These are always wars, but this could be a war with a lot of speed going on this time around.
Yeah, look, as in I think the Steelers are going to keep going at +3.5. I'm taking them. I'm also taking the unders in this game. I think this is going to be a really, really tight game. Not going to be high scoring. And I'm going to take the Steelers to win and cover the +3.5.
I'm going to go with the Ravens to win, but I could see potentially it coming down to a field goal late, and I think Justin Tucker might just do the business for the Ravens and the Ravens to win by field goal.
Yeah, I'm going Steelers to win. I think they'll stifle the Ravens for whatever reason. I'm going to keep picking them until they lose a game this season.
I'm with you as well, Stephen. I'm going Steelers to win on this one. I think they're going to have enough. And the Ravens, the good team they played against the Chiefs, they lost to. Steelers are another good team. So I'm with the Steelers on this. The surprise in many ways of the season so far, obviously on their first loss last weekend, Titans -5.5 against the Bengals.
Titans straight away, -5 covered.
Titans bounce back, win, cover. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I think they manhandled the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm worried about a Joe Burrow backdoor cover at the very last with a touchdown in the end. But yeah, you got to go Titans on this one to win by a touchdown at least, I'd say. The Chargers, the Broncos then. Chargers are giving 3 points to the Broncos.
I'll go for it.
Am I reading that right, Brian?
Yeah, the Broncos are getting 3 points. Yeah, I'm picking the Broncos to win the game, actually. I like Drew Lock and
I think all of our listeners know that you like Drew Lock at this stage. You have literally been talking up Drew Lock all season.
Lock it up. They'll win this weekend.
Oh, you've been waiting to use that one all night. To Mark's point, the prettiest deep ball in the NFL, Justin Herbert, LA Chargers -3.5. I'm gonna back the rookie in this game.
Yeah, I think the Chargers should win. I think the Broncos probably will win, but I'm going to go with the stats and say that the Chargers win it, but I guarantee you that's not going to happen. But anyway.
Drew Lock is locked up. It's going to be just about on the Chargers taking this game. I'm going to keep betting against the Broncos now, just out of spite, I think. Right, the Saints versus the Bears in this regard, guys. Are the Bears, the wagon's falling off the wheel? The wheels falling off the wagon even?
I'm going to...
Yep. The Packers fan, I'd just say yeah. Absolutely. We're waiting for that moment, that loss. So yeah, I reckon the Saints wipe the floor with them.
Yeah, I'm with Stephen on this one. I think it's the exact same. I think I don't even need to know the handicap. It's Saints to cover this one easily.
I'm going to pick the Bears. They beat the Bucs at home a few weeks ago when no one expected them to win, and I think they'll do the same this week. I think Breeze still worries me, and I think the Bears will cover. So you have the 4 points. No, I'm definitely taking the Bears.
Yeah, I'm worried about Breeze in this game necessarily, but I'm not worried about Alvin Kamara, and I think Michael Thomas might be back. So I'll take the Saints in the game. But if they're winning with defense. That's the reality. We talked about the NFC best. San Francisco 49ers against the Seahawks. Seahawks giving 3 points to the 49ers.
I'll go with the Seahawks cover, -3. I think it'll come down to the fourth quarter and you see Seattle pull away and win the game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same. I think I'm going to go with Seattle for this game.
Same with you on that one.
Yeah, Hawks all the way. Cowboys at the Eagles. Somebody unfortunately has to win it.
There's no spread at the moment because you don't even know who's playing quarterback for the Cowboys. But I think the Eagles will win this game.
Like, I just don't know what's happened to the Cowboys. I wasn't high on them at the start of the season, but I didn't think they'd be this bad and this atrocious. And then I thought we spoke about Andy Dalton as a backup quarterback to get in the offseason was a great one, but like he's probably not going to be in this game. I'm going to go with the Eagles, and they've 2 offensive lines. Both teams are banged up, but I'm going to go with the Eagles and Wentz to win this one.
Yeah, which on that one as well. Dallas again, just gone shocking, and he's lost the locker room by the sounds of it. So yeah, definitely Eagles.
Yeah, Eagles all the way. They'll ultimately win out in that division. And then to wrap it all up, Brian, unfortunately, Monday Night Football features pretty much all the teams at some point. For the viewers of ESPN, they've had some great games the last while. They also now have to put up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is bad enough, but they're playing the New York Giants, which is even worse.
Hopefully this is the last time we're playing late because I can't be doing these late games anymore. I'm 42. I'm getting old. 10.5 points. No, Bucks will cover.
Yeah, I'm Tom Brady, Scotty Miller, and his Julian Edelman lookalike. I'm going with the Bucks minus 10.5 for this game.
Yep, which again?
Giants been more competitive than people give him credit for, but Bucks for me as well. Tom Brady to extend his record-setting NFL touchdown regular season, just more touchdowns, more records. Right, that wraps up the games. Brian and Gordo, hand over to you guys to wrap up with the bets. And just before I jump off, just want to give another shout out and thanks to Stephen from the UK and Irish Packers. Please check him out. The podcast, the website, every social media channel known to man. Well worth a listen and well worth engaging with. Super knowledgeable about the Packers and the NFL in general. And to say thanks to Stephen for joining us. But I know you like the betting, Stephen, so let's see what words of wisdom Mr. O'Leary has for us this week on his ACCA.
Stephen, this has been a marathon episode of the Irish NFL podcast, so fair play for lasting this long. This just doesn't normally happen. I'm going to put it down to the quality of the guests we have this week. But as Mark said, the betting side of the site, we're horseracing.buddy.ie. We teamed up to them this season. Brian O'Leary is our betting guru and has been giving a banker of the week, treble of the week, and in some touchdown passes. So, Brian, firstly, banker of the week, where am I betting the house?
We've done 6 bankers in a row and we've got them all up. So this week, my banker is, I'm going to Titans. I think they'll bounce back against the Bengals, and they're minus 5.5. I think the Titans will win and cover. That's the banker. And then the treble, Packers minus 7, Dolphins minus 4. And I'm going to put the Ravens in, surprisingly, against the Steelers, minus 3.5. I think by the weekend it'll be down to 2.5. And then I think a field goal will cover. So I'd be advising anyone to drop the line slightly to 2.5, and then you get a field goal win and your bet is covered. And just to point out that the treble came up last weekend in terms of the betting for the QBs. We tend to do quarterback bets because they're nice and pricey, Stephen, and a fair few of them have come up this season. Going to go with Mahomes to run one in against the Chiefs. I actually think Cam might run one in against the Bills, so I'm just going to double that up for the time being. And I haven't had an opportunity to really delve into it just yet. Still early in the week, Gordon. But certainly the Titans is the banker bet this week.
Brilliant. Titans banker bet minus 5.5 against the Bengals. And as we said, horseracing.buddy.ie, you'll find all of Brian's bets across their social media channels. And yeah, that is the pod this week. And as Mark said, Stephen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. The UK and Irish Packers podcast, I know that's the main frontier of what's happening at the moment. So what days do you normally drop your episodes, just so our listeners know as well?
Yeah, usually Monday is the post-game review, and then Wednesday, Thursday is usually the preview of the next game. So we
Perfect. Mark, sign us off.
Good night from us, guys.
Good night, guys.